Nick Dellacamera, what is the hardest lesson you've learned as a gym owner?
Trying to do every single thing in the gym myself.
I believe that. Elaborate. When does that become the thing? Like when does that reach a breaking point for you?
Or when did it?
So when the paper gets signed and you realize that you own the gym now, and you're still a coach, you're still a somewhat of an administrator, and your days are filled with floor hours while you're still trying to maintain a business. So that actually the next day after the paper gets signed and you know it's crunch time now.
Yeah, because you bought your gym, the gym that you were coaching in, right? So you bought it, you bought in and became the owner from there. So at that moment, you're like, oh, you were kind of running the place before then, or managing.
So the one good thing about me being here so long before I owned the gym was that I did learn a lot of the things, with the exception of like all the book work and all the stuff like where you really need some help with, like accounting wise, and like making sure that everything is like, flowing right, and expenses, and like all the different kinds of things that you have to have going on in the gym to maintain the everyday stuff. Besides like the actual classes and training that are going on. So you know how to use the system as a coach. You know how to obviously train people. That's what we got in the business for, right? Is learning that we had a passion that we would like to coach people and provide a service level. But once it takes effect of like, okay, now I own the gym and I have to manage the people that are going to do all those things. You have to figure out a way to step out and start to focus on working on the business rather than in the business so much. So that's when it all takes effect. It hits you all at once and you don't even have any time to plan. And then you're really stuck because you have no way of understanding, like, how can you get out of there as soon as possible without taking in the money that you take in, right? Because you don't want to lose the money right away, obviously, as well.
How long had you been coaching at the gym, Nick, before you got the itch to become the owner? Like, how long have you been doing all that?
So I started part-time, like a couple hours a week shadowing, 2012. So I walked in the gym as a member, and the previous owner came up to me and was like, hey, seems to be that you're really like into this, some stuff already about fitness, because I've been working out since I was, 14 years old, off and on. And so he asked me if I was interested in coaching part-time. It's one of those things where, like, I realize that now when I see people walk in the door here, it's almost, you can already identify a coach, like, or if they have the ability to get through to somebody in a way that that they'll be successful. So I feel like he had that eye. He came to me, he asked me, and he was like, okay, well, I'll train you myself. And I was like, okay, I don't really know anything about this. So this was 2012, where I started to shadow the actual owner himself. And then, within a year's time, I was actually coaching a few classes, and I had my first personal training client. You're talking, so 2012, I took over 3 years ago, which brings us to 2018.
Yeah.
So about 6 years. All right. And so like the first year and a half, couple years was like finding my way, figuring out how I was going to do this. Then it turned into more of like, okay, I can make some money doing this after the first couple years.
So it sounds like you really got the opportunity to kind of like do this a co-owner apprenticeship ownership type thing for a little bit, because you got the opportunity to kind of like shadow. I don't know if I've heard that before, of the idea of like getting to kind of really ease your way in or see some of those things. Did you get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of what it meant to be an owner before you got to officially like take on the title?
Yes, I did, but not in the back end way. Like I did from, like, they did a very good job of keeping everything secluded, and sense of like, making the gym present to be this like great place, but then obviously they had the trials and tribulations and all these like stress things that they had to go through all the time to make sure that the gym consistently had a good membership base, right? And so I didn't get to see all of like the personal conversations between the two owners, but I got to see like the complaints or the, you know, the things that we would get from, say, for example, members or whatever it could be, that we're like, okay, you could do this, or we would like you to do this, or whatever it could be. But yeah, never got to see like what the actual, because not for nothing, when you're just learning about something, when you see 20 to 25 people in a room every single time there's a class going on, you're like, oh my God. And you're
It seems like a successful business.
yeah,
Right.
You're multiplying, you know, $200 times 25 people in a room throughout
Gym
the day,
math,
70
baby.
classes a day, boy. Oh, we're fucking rolling.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, okay, these guys are making a shit ton of money. And then you're like, okay, I know they got to pay rent, and I don't know what all the other expenses are. Obviously, you know, payroll and all those other things. But you start to kind of map out. You're like, okay, this is a pretty good business right here. Like, there's a potential here to like do something.
Yeah.
And so that's where it caught my eye, and it was like, okay, if I can get my opportunity, I'm going to take it. Because I literally was on the verge of like creating my own website already and everything, like before I got the opportunity to take over, and I got wind that they wanted. See, I knew for years that they wanted to get out. So about 5 years before I took over, I knew that their time was coming and they wanted to actually move away from this area. And
Gotcha.
so I was like, okay, this is all processing. Let me figure out if there's an opportunity here. And you know, once it was like a little bit more public, like not public to the members, but like public to the staff, that they were really going to probably move within a couple years, like out of the area, I actually picked up the phone and called the owner, and I was like, look, I want in. You are getting ready to get rid of this gym. I want the first opportunity.
Yeah.
And I had to let that be known before, you know, because I think they always had it in their mind that they wanted to keep it as an internal sale before they had to search external.
Yeah.
Now we haven't established yet, Nick, where is the gym? So where do you call home for everybody listening and watching?
CrossFit Stamford, 75 Cell over in Stamford, Connecticut.
Okay.
East Coast.
Now, East Coast. Yeah.
Race. Big race everywhere.
So transitioning from that story of coming in, kind of getting started, cutting your teeth as a coach, shadowing, you said the hardest thing that you learned as a gym owner is that you literally can't do all the things forever. What did that look like? What did that transition look like when kind of you decided that you were your own worst enemy and you were kind of this bottleneck that was keeping your gym from kind of doing what you wanted it to do? What did that transition
how did your
look
tasks
like?
evolve from what you were doing before to what you're doing now? What have you kind of dropped off and picked up on? And
so I went through actually like an up and down of like taking myself out of stuff and then getting back into stuff. So as a coach to start here, and then going into a gym owner, I knew that when I took over, there's got to be a way that I figure out to keep my coaches here and build a career for them. Because there's only a very limited amount of time, if not, right? And so what happens is, it's like, okay, when somebody becomes 34 years old or lower, they're going to say to themselves, okay, how can I be a coach for the rest of my life and only take home $30,000 a year or whatever it is and work 8 hours a day? There's only so long you can do that, because obviously things come along in life where it's like, okay, somebody may get married, somebody may have kids, and they're like, okay, I can't afford to take care of my family anymore. I got to get a real job. So that was always the stigma. It was like, I got to get a real job. But what if I can create a real job here? And so there was always figuring out a way to do that. So that was one of my first steps. And then figuring out, once I can make more money for the gym and figure out ways to, you know, bring in more flow for the trainers, it's like, okay, now we have like more stability going on. They don't have to worry about like their days are numbered of like how much money they're going to make. So, but I didn't have a plan yet. That was just my mind, like thinking like, okay, this is what I need to do. And then one of the hardest things was actually taking myself off the schedule where I was like, okay, well, now I have to, if I take myself off the schedule, I have to pay people for these classes. And then I'm taking money out of my pocket when I'm on a break-even basis, you know, because I obviously, well, people don't know this, but I didn't buy the gym outright. I didn't have money in the backyard like I wish I used to, and go and buy the gym like in cash. Like, so I had a debt, right, every month. And I'm like, okay, anything that is not happening consistently, you know, when I took over, if I take myself away, I have to pay somebody. So now I'm losing money, right? And so now I'm not breaking. So I got to get more clients in. So there's always that mindset of like, anything that I don't do, I have to pay somebody to do, and I can't afford to pay anybody to do so.
Yeah, it's like a cyclical trap that once you're in it, there's no way to get. It's tough to get out until you break that logic. You just have to start to value, like, whatever, I got to take the hit because I can't scale from here, you know?
So I learned that I take the hit and I take myself out. And so I did that. I took myself out, and I think I only coached like 2 classes a week, and I still had my one-on-one clients that I would train. And I realized that I was allowing myself more time to work on the business when I wasn't coaching those classes anymore. So it actually was more beneficial. It's very hard to do, but once you do it, you realize the benefit. But then you lose coaches, right? Because you still don't have a plan to keep these coaches like in a career where you want them to be, like knowing that there's like, you know, like an upward rise for their career here. So, you know, I faced the fact where I had to step back in and coach some more classes because I lost a couple coaches due to like everyday life stuff. It wasn't because they weren't happy here, but it was like, okay, I'm moving to West Coast or something like that. You know, and so I had to step back into the business and work in the business again. And then I found myself like not having the time, especially with having, you know, a family and everything, not having the time to balance everything out. So shit starts getting really stressful.
Yeah. When, at what point did this get like extremely real? I mean, there's a moment in here where you got debt because you bought the gym. You're sitting there, you're trying to work your way out. Like, is there a moment where you go, all right, I have to now. I absolutely need to start approaching things differently. When was that moment?
So when I got about 2 years in, I would say year and a half, 2 years in, what is it? So 18, we hit COVID. What did we hit COVID in 20? So 2 years in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we got hit with like, you have to close your door. And now it's like, oh shit, what am I gonna do? Like, I get like emails like immediately, probably like within a day or two, of people that were like, okay, I have to put my membership on pause. I don't know when we're coming back.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so now like I'm not like really dependent on the money to come from state yet to pay my employees and like to take care of my bills and stuff. I'm more along the lines of like, okay, wait, like I have to actually sit back and think about like how I'm going to make as much money as possible through these months until we actually open our doors again and people start coming back in. And then it was like every single day I would dread to wake up. It was like every single day I would wake up and I would see an email where it was like, hey, I have to put my membership on pause. I'm sorry. So, you know, it got to the point where, you know, our revenue was cut in half by 50% for like 3 months. Yeah, like literally in half. And I'm like, okay, like I have to keep my head down. I have to keep on going. I can't just stay home. And so I made some things happen where we provided the best possible service that we could. And like gave out all our equipment. And it was like, okay, just counting the days where it's like, okay, when are we going to get back in the door? When can I get some of my members back? I had a list of members, literally losing like, 30 plus members because of COVID, right? And so that's a lot of revenue for you gym owners that know a monthly EFT is like obviously your bread and butter, and you're like, okay, I need that money coming in every month, but I don't have it anymore from those 30 people. So that's a big difference, right? So that's kind of when I realized like I got to make some changes, because I was like, what if I come back from COVID and these people still don't come back? Like, I'm still cut in half.
So you started to
how
really
do I make up?
You started to really like rethink how you were doing everything. Then at this point, you're like, I got it. This whole system now can be retooled because you had a reset a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had an idea, like, it was like, okay, now is my opportunity to like figure out ways that I can come in full force. And that's when I reached out to, that's about when I reached out to John. After we actually were up and running for like, it's like two and a half months, right? We got back here June of 20 in the gym, well, outside first, because we wanted to ease people back in. Then we got in the gym of June of 20. And then I think I reached out to John one night in like October. So maybe 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting ready to actually fly out to the West Coast to try to figure out if there's an opportunity for me to do something with another gym owner, you know, and figure out if there was some way that, you know, I can ramp things up here, right? And build my brand and you know, things like that. And then I reached out to John, and when I got back, we had a like a serious conversation about like taking everything that we have here. And you know, first it was like, hey John, I need some help with some back end stuff. And John was like, okay. You know,
Yeah, you
like
want to know how if you
picked
could
up the
change
phone.
colors on buttons, Nick,
Yeah,
on the
colors,
website.
buttons, fix the website,
Website stuff.
get an online store, like some things that I thought like would benefit us, right? Like, it
Yeah,
would
you're
help
just
us,
grasping
like,
at straws at that point, right? You're just like, here's a world full of problems. Let me just start throwing solutions at the wall and see what sticks.
And certainly
Right.
what, like, we know, like, when you go to another gym or you look at what other people have, it's like, well, they have this,
Mm-hmm.
they have a super sweet store, or they have these things. And it's like, well, then, all right, well, they look like they got it figured out. So like, maybe that's what we need to get right now.
Right. And I think one of the biggest things that I don't know if I mentioned this to you in the thing was like, basically like, okay, like some of these places are selling these things online where they're not even physically doing the hours. Like, I'd like to maybe be able to do something like that, where it's like almost like I have the same membership base as like what I have in gym outside of gym. And so that was in my mind. I was like, okay, this could be a way at ramping up the personal training. And so, you know, we had a decent personal training business and we had some of these things already. We got some really great coaches that are fucking amazing. So I was like, okay, how can I get going with this? And then I came back from vacation / you know, trying to do some business. And John was like, all right, well, how about we just ramp it up like times like 30. And I was like, he was like, all I need you to do is just tell me yes or no. Are you ready? And I was like, yeah. I don't really even think I had to think about it. I was like, yes, of course I am. Like, I am like in that mindset already. That's just the person I am, of like, there's no way you stay in a comfort zone of like trying to like hustle and grind without taking chances. And obviously, you know, spending money and knowing that it's going to cost you money to make money. I've always known that. That's, you know, that's just something that I was instilled as a kid, and it always stuck with me. So John was like, okay, well, how would you like to, like, you know, go to Stratosphere? And I was like, well, yeah, let's go. Like, and
well, because
hear what you have to say.
Every conversation we had wasn't pointing me in the direction of buttons on a website, right? No, it was these conversations where you had these much bigger things that you wanted to achieve. And so I'm like, well, like, we could fix the website, or like we could just launch this bitch like into the lower regions of the atmosphere and see what happens next. And you were like,
right.
You know,
I mean, I think one of the things I said to you was like, I want to take over the East Coast. And, and, you know, I wasn't fucking around when I said that. So I was like, okay, how can I start to take my path towards that? Like, how can I be, you know, the biggest, you know, well-known, you know, gym in the East Coast that's, you know, providing a higher level of service than anybody around me, so that like everybody that sees us now wants to be here because what we're doing.
Well, having known Nick for probably 5 years now, 4 or 5 years about, give or take, is like we've seen these like transitions where like Nick starts to take it like so I've seen over the years, and the first one was kind of as you started to really stamp in your coaching philosophy, was kind of in some of the educational stuff we've done with seminars we had met at before. And then, but I remember just before I had moved overseas was when you had bought the gym too. You had another baby.
I sent you a message.
You had another baby.
And I was like, yo, I'm taking over the gym now.
Baby was just born and you just bought the gym. And I had told somebody else,
Yeah.
Nick was like, oh, I'll come over and I'd like to come out and visit you, but I just bought the gym. So maybe this summer or something. I was like, we'll see you in 5 years. You're not going anywhere. You just bought a gym.
I remember that. Yeah.
But I remember those moments. And then all of those things are like, Nick is taking this seriously. This is he's putting a stamp on each one of these things. And these are like major, not even like, we talk a lot about limiting beliefs, but like just a turning point where you like are deciding to value yourself, your situation, and really take a thing to the next level. And when you had that conversation with John about where it's like, I'm ready to take this thing, I want to take over the East Coast, and I knew you weren't fucking around, like that is absolutely another one of those cases. And since then, Nick, it's been fucking madness, right? It's been a lot of work. You've made all sorts of changes, but the troubles of COVID are no more, and the success that you guys have had is hands down like nothing I've ever seen. And it's not just purely on the strategies we've had, but it's the mindset change that you had as soon as you got to this, where you're like, no more bullshit. We're doing this. We're really doing this. I'm not pretending. I'm not sitting back in my gym and wondering why it's not working out the way I want it to, or wondering why I'm not making the money I want to. You just said, no more. We're doing it. Whatever it takes. I'm going to figure this out. And as soon as you took ownership of that, things have just skyrocketed.
Yeah. I was literally like, okay, I'm going to take a back seat. I'm going to ask the stupidest questions that I have to ask to find out answers for. I'm going to learn. I don't even know how to press many buttons on a fucking computer. Like John was there. The best thing that I've always learned here is that in order to be able to deliver something, you have to be able to learn it yourself to understand how to deliver it correctly to your people that you want to hire to deliver it the way that you would want it delivered, right? And so I literally was like, John is the best at this stuff. He's going to teach me everything he knows, and I'm just going to, adapt to all these situations that I have to.
Mm-hmm.
So. And obviously you want things to happen quickly, but you're like, okay, I have this. And it's like, okay, let's systematize it. Let's make sure it goes in order the way we need it to go. And then like, we just renewed I and John recently with what we're doing for the next 6 months here. Mm-hmm. Like after almost a whole year of basically everything that we wanted to put into place, you know what I mean? Kind of like getting to that point now where it's like actually there and running. And I have like a staff full of people that are like, I can walk out of the door and not be here for 2 days, and now I don't have to worry about anything. That was one of the biggest things.
You were complimentary, and I appreciate that. The idea of like the frameworks and the strategy, but the biggest difference is that you could have all the strategy in the world, but it was in the combination with you being like an absolute psychopath when it came to like execution and just taking full ownership on what you wanted to do. I wanted to do this, and I'm willing to go as hard as I can in the paint to go make it happen. And it just made it to where it's like, all right, here's the roadmap. And you're like, all right, I'm already down. Like I'm already on it. Like I'm already driving in that direction. And that's where I think that combination of the two just made it to where that's why the success that you've had is on the back of you not sitting around and being like, oh, well, I'm going to pay a bunch of people to make this happen. It's like, no, I'm going to put the right people in place, and then I'm going to just execute ruthlessly. And you've seen just tons of benefit.
Well, Nick, you've learned so many things now. It's like, and also like you, by the way, when you said that you had to kind of learn a little bit of how to do each of these things that you were always present and you didn't understand them, that doesn't mean these things are your job anymore, right? But you understand them enough to know how they operate, and then you delegate, and you've moved on. I mean, you went from coaching to not coaching. You went from doing 100% of your gym sales mostly to now doing almost none of it. The vast majority of all the sales come through your employees who have been appointed to handle these things now. So this is a system that you're not the bottleneck anymore. And the only bottleneck is on innovation and the gas pedal. Those are the two things that go through Nick, Right. And so and that's how it should be, because these systems just completely execute themselves.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I literally would get on a phone call with John every single morning for I think 3 months, like every single morning, so he can hold my hand, like and like just give me a checklist of stuff that I would have to do every day so I can stay organized, because I was still in the business, working in the business at at some level still. So I had to figure out how can I be organized enough to be able to get all these tasks done and create this bigger thing. And then as these things started to happen, it was like, no longer are you like, you know, all right, I have to step away for a couple hours. Like if I do, shit's gonna go to shit. Or if I have to, you know, not do all the sales myself, is it actually gonna work out, right? And it's like, and then once you have the right people, like John said, in place, and you know, go through finding the right people, you can take a back seat. You don't have to do anything anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking John's got a hard out, so I'm going to get to the last question here, Nick. Okay.
Yeah.
So the final wrap up question, and guys, Nick's going to be on before. Nick is helping us a lot with some of the sales stuff now. Some of the stuff that he went through, Nick's going to be teaching some of these things as we get further on. So you guys will be hearing from Nick again in the future. Absolutely. So I'm gonna let you guys know. You can get a hold of Nick at. You can find Nick's gym at CF Stamford on Instagram. You can find Nick at Dellacamera on everything else. Dellacamera on Instagram. CF Stamford on Instagram. My phone's blowing up like crazy now. Yeah. What else? Oh, Nick also has a podcast talking about the gym life with one of his coaches called All the Reps Podcast. Highly recommend checking that out as well. I may have been a guest on there a couple times. So before we run out of time, Nick, will you give what's one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who maybe wants to follow in your footsteps?
So one piece of advice that I would give is being able to accept the fact that you want to have the best place in the world, and then you're willing to go through everything you need to go through to do so.
Yeah.
Like you need to actually sit down and realize that you're ready for that step. And you are going to know that, like, okay, this is going to cost me money, and it's going to be beneficial, and I'm going to learn a lot more. And, knowing that you have to hire the right people to help you do so.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's exceptionally good advice. Nick has been our poster boy for success. The sky is the limit. We've been it's been a real treat seeing Nick, someone I consider a friend, and the things that have been going his way lately. It's been, John and I have a lot of internet high fives when we hear back from Nick on things that he's crushing here and there. It's definitely for the same thing that gym owners get when their clients have success and somebody loses their weight or hits their goals. That's the nice thing for John and I. We get pretty fired up, and having a guy that comes in is tuned up, keyed up, and ready to just rock and really make the things happen. Like Nick, it's easy because everything we say, every strategy we give has its maximum chance of success, because you're like, all right, I want the thing, I really want the thing, and it makes it so much easier to make that stuff happen.
Yeah.
So Nick, thanks a lot for coming in. Guys, you're going to hear from Nick absolutely again in the future. Nick will be all over the thing. Nick's going to be able to teach you guys how to do some of the stuff that he's done, how to run the sales stuff, and really teach on some of the transitions that go on in the back end with businesses and all that stuff. Because there's a lot that goes on that people don't see. If we just say sell this, sell this, sell this, or stack this, it's very different than what it's going to be if you have somebody like Nick who's like, all right, I am ready to absolutely rock and roll and still make all those processes work. Because there's a transition. You can't just flip all this stuff on. It was a year, right? Totally.
Yeah. We're on.
It's not even a year.
It's 11 months now,
dude. And I don't even know. All I can say is I'm not going to give away any of Nick's candy or any of the stuff. This is all behind in the gym owners thing anyways. But Nick's gym has become what I would describe as indescribably more profitable in the last 11 months. It's crazy, right? It doesn't even.
Yeah. The number in mind that we had when we first started this has actually become a reality. And now I'm actually not even a year in, and I'm like, all right, the number has to change now.
Yeah, which is crazy. I want to send you off on one more thing. I want to say one more thing before we go. Can you tell me what happened with tell them what you got clear of this summer? The guys who owned the gym. You paid it off.
Oh, yeah. August came. I was backed up for 3 months during COVID. I actually just gave them a lump sum a month early and got them out of my way. I got the landlords paid off from the 3 months they gave us a break for COVID being shut down. like all within like 3 months time. I got all that done. I actually paid the owners off like a month early just to get them out of the way and have a
Done.
clear
Now
head
it's
going
yours.
into. Yeah, I wanted a clear head. I was
Nobody
like, all
else's
right, you know
hooks.
what? Yeah, I'm out of here.
That's
I
awesome.
gotta go now.
I love that. All right, guys, thanks a lot. Find Nick. You can find me at Tyler F. and Stone. All our other stuff. Shop the pod or check out the podcast at the Gym Owners Podcast on Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes. What else we got? Join the Facebook group if you're hearing this. If you're watching this, you're already in the Facebook group. You can find me at Tyler F. and Stone on Instagram, John at JBanksFL, and go to hackyourgym on gym.com for more. Thanks a lot, Nick. We'll see you later.